Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free, impartial advice on all your debt.
This is UMAR AHMED for IFLCB in association with MTK Global via Zoom. I'm joined by Mr. Mike Coppinger. How are you keeping, Mike? All good?
Everything good over here. Just trying to avoid another lockdown, but weather's still pretty good in LA, so no complaints.
Well, we're here in a lockdown in the UK, but luckily boxing is thriving still in the UK as it is in the States to some degree. A lot of news this week, Mike. Let's start with the fallout, if you like, between Terence Crawford, Bob Arum, and Top Rank. What have you made of the situation?
As I laid out on The Athletic last week, it's a pretty bad situation right now with Terence Crawford's lawyer sending a letter back in September saying basically that, look, you guys have not delivered any marquee fights for Terence Crawford. There's no end in sight, and something needs to be done. And I'm not sure that anything's going to be done, Umar. Crawford's contract with Top Rank does expire in October 2021 per sources. And it seems that my article has created a lot of headaches now. I see, Bob Arum firing at Crawford. I didn't expect that. Crawford fired back yesterday with Akim Barak over on Dazn. So it seems that things are just getting worse. And I don't see why PBC would come and bail out Top Rank and Crawford right now by extending an olive branch in the form of a fight with one of their many top welterweights.
Do you remember a time where a promoter has come out and criticised the profile of a top guy? I'm talking about a pound-for-pound guy such as Terence Crawford. Have we had that before?
I'd have to think more on it, but it's definitely unusual. But look, I get both sides of it. I understand that Terence Crawford is frustrated that he hasn't got the big fight, and I understand Bob Arum saying that he's overpaying Terence Crawford. Crawford made $4 million on Saturday, but no one's forcing Top Rank to pay Crawford $4 million. They negotiated that. So, Crawford delivered in the fight. He beat Kell Brook with ease, knocked him out in the fourth round. But I also have to disagree with something Crawford said. I saw Crawford say yesterday on that same show that it's Bob Arum's job to promote me. It's not my job. That's where he's wrong. It's both their jobs. Crawford has to be his biggest champion. He has to be the one screaming from the rooftop, trying to build his own profile with Top Rank assisting in that. And I haven't really seen that either.
An example of that, I guess, is Teofimo Lopez.
Definitely. Teofimo Lopez has done a great job with the self-promotion, talks a lot of trash. He gets out there, he does every interview, and he's definitely helped his own cause with everything he does. And Terence Crawford is really not interested in doing that.
Mike, what have you made of Errol Spence coming out and saying that he demands 60-40 in a fight if it was happening against Terence Crawford? Do you think he's got a point?
Well, he actually told us that on our podcast. And I think he does have a point, absolutely. Errol Spence is clearly the bigger draw. He did over 300,000 pay-per-view buys in the U.S. for fights with both Mikey Garcia and Sean Porter. Crawford, his pay-per-view with Victor Postal a few years ago, I don't even think it cracked 75,000. And then the Amir Khan fight did in the low 100s, I believe. And I saw some people on Twitter say, well, look, Porter, Mikey Garcia, those are better opponents, but I don't think they're so much better that it's going to do triple. I think Spence is a large part of that. Spence is a big draw in Texas. He had over 45,000 fans against Mikey Garcia. Yes, Mikey Garcia helped a lot, but Spence is the bigger draw so far. And if he wants 60-40, he's entitled to ask for that.
If Spence is to come through Danny Garcia, which is no easy task, do you think that fight will be made if Terence Crawford signs with PBC? Do you think that fight will happen?
No, I don't. I don't see that fight happening until Crawford leaves Top Rank. Like, PBC and Top Rank aren't really getting along great right now after Wilder Fury fell apart. And I don't see why PBC is going to help soothe that friction by extending a fight in the form of whether it's Errol Spence or even Keith Thurman. Even the Dennis or Ugis would be a step up at this point.
Even if Terence Crawford was to sign a contract with PBC, do you think there's still no guarantee that fight happens?
I mean, surely Crawford and his team can negotiate with PBC at that time and say, hey, look, we'll sign with you, but the first fight has to be Spence. They can do that. So I think it's up to them.
Okay, let's move on to the heavyweight division. Of course, we had Tyson Fury cancel his fight on December 5th here in London. That was supposed to take place. We don't know what's going on with Deontay Wilder at the moment. What do you think Fury's next move is? What do you think Wilder's next move is? We know Joshua's boxing.
I think Tyson Fury's next move is going to be waiting to see what happens on December 12th with Anthony Joshua and Kubrat Pulev. Obviously, I and everyone else would be shocked if Joshua had any problems at all with Pulev. So maybe they can make a deal shortly thereafter, whether in the new year, and get that Joshua Fury fight done for the spring, 2-fight deal. I know they already have their financial agreement, right? We already know that they agreed to 50-50, 60-40 for the winner in the second fight. I don't think it's that complicated a deal to make, relatively speaking, of course. Anthony Joshua is not tied to the zone. They can do that fight on ESPN pay-per-view, no problem if they want, contractually. So on the other side, Deontay Wilder, I don't know. I think I see him fighting a Charles Martin type, some kind of. I'm not saying him specifically, but some kind of comeback type opponent. And then I think what makes a lot of sense is if you're PBC and you're Al Heyman, you kind of pit Andy Ruiz against Deontay Wilder next year in a pay-per-view fight. That would do nice business, I think, in the U.S. It's a really good fight. I think it's a 50-50 fight. Great style clash with the big puncher in Wilder against a pressure fighter who throws big punches and is fast in Andy Ruiz. I think Ruiz gives Wilder a lot of problems, and I think I'd even lean toward picking him in that fight if he's in shape. But first, Ruiz is going to fight Chris Arreola in early 2021.
Okay. So, yeah, as I said, Anthony Joshua, we know his next move against Kubrat Pulev. What's your understanding of this situation going on with Fury and Wilder where they're in a period of arbitration and it potentially might end up in court? Can you tell us anything on that, Mike, please?
Well, it won't go to a court probably because the contract, that 2-fight deal they made for the second and third fight, it contained a dispute resolution provision. It basically said if something like this were to occur, it would go to mediation first, followed by binding arbitration. So that arbitrator will be able to decide it legally. Say, all right, hey, Tyson Fury, you have to give this third fight to Deontay Wilder, or maybe you have to give him damages. But I think there will be clarity, hopefully before the end of the year there.
What did you make of Deontay Wilder calling out Dylan White?
I love that fight too. If not, Deontay Wilder, there's a bunch of heavyweights right now. Let's push Fury and Joshua to the side. Let's assume they fight each other. You can mix and match Deontay Wilder, Alexander Povetkin, to a lesser extent, Dillian White, Andy Ruiz, maybe even Joseph Parker, Alexander Usyk, and make a lot of really fun fights. I mean, I love Wilder and Dillian White. Both guys talk great trash. They don't like each other really, and I don't know who wins that one either. I think that's a great fight. I think Ruiz and White is a great fight. I think you could do kind of like a Three Kings there. Just do like a tournament of sorts.
You could. I mean, Wilder listed Joseph Parker, Alexander Usyk, Dylan White, Andy Ruiz in his list, but he also included Robert Helenius, which took people by surprise.
Yeah, it's kind of like the old Bob Arum trick, right? Bob Arum will say, Terrence Crawford, well, he's going to fight either, Mean Machine or Sean Porter or Errol Spence next, right? So if he's throwing Robert Helenius out there, there's probably a good reason for that. Although I do expect Robert Helenius to face Adam Kovnowski in a rematch in early 2021. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw Wilder fighting Helenius. Why else is he going to throw the name out there?
Mike, in terms of the network situation, of course, Canelo Alvarez boxes on Dazn after splitting up with them. How do you think Dazn and Eddie Hearn are getting along in the US?
I think certainly this helps a tremendous deal. Eddie Hearn brought Canelo Alvarez back to Dazn. He deserves credit for that. And look, it's a 1-fight deal, but if Eddie Hearn could somehow get it done now where Canelo fights Triple G for a third time in the spring, then the zone's going to have to be very happy with Eddie Hearn. It's obvious that Eddie Hearn hasn't had the splash he wanted in the U.S. so far, but this is great. He's making headway now toward doing that.
Yeah, a lot of people were quite critical of DAZN during this kind of pandemic period. Do you think that was a bit harsh?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of an overreaction. Certainly things looked grim, and they have been bad so far. I mean, we haven't had a single good fight on DAZN since Mikey Garcia, Jesse Vargas probably in February. I mean, what else has there been since then? Devin Haney fight was a mismatch. Maybe I'm forgetting. I mean, Usyk Chisora was good, but that was that was a UK fight. I'm talking about fights in the US in prime time here, and there really hasn't been anything. Obviously, that's not going to change with Danny Jacobs against Gabe Rosado. But December's looking really good. Canelo Callum Smith is a great fight. Ryan Garcia, Luke Campbell, that'll probably be in December. Golovkin, Zarameta, not great, but just watching Triple G fight is always nice. Joshua Pulev, not a huge fight, but it is one of the biggest stars in the sport. So things are starting to look a little better there.
How does Joshua rate in the States?
He doesn't have the biggest profile here yet, but it's getting bigger and bigger. He obviously did sell out Madison Square Garden. That was impressive. And look, I don't know. I mean, Joshua, certainly Canelo is far bigger than Joshua here. Fury's a lot bigger than Joshua here too. But I think if Joshua were to fight here a couple of times, he would get a lot bigger. And I certainly think that fight with Fury, if it happens, is going to do easily over 1 million pay-per-view buys in the U.S.
Just before I let you go, Mike, want to quickly get your reaction to MTK signing a lot of Golden Boy fighters recently, including the likes of Virgil Ortiz and Jojo Diaz as well a few weeks ago. What have you made of MTK's move into that kind of West Coast market?
I think it's really smart. I think the West Coast has a lot of great fighters, and boxing is really popular here, especially with the Latino fan base. And it's great. Fighters have had a lot of issues with Golden Boy over the years. So if MTK can help them, that's good for everyone. Jojo Diaz has been under-promoted for a long time. He's a champion. He talks a great game, too. He has a great fighting style, comes straight forward. So I think it's time that Jojo Diaz is given main event opportunities, and time for Virgil Ortiz to step it up. And we'll see if MTK can work with Golden Boy to get that done.
MTK, of course, did a deal with Havoc as well in terms of their New York side of things with Andre Rozier as well. So they're making a real mark now in America, aren't they?
Yeah, they're definitely starting to picking up some young fighters, some good ones, and it makes a lot of sense for them to expand. They're already dominating in the UK with guys like Tyson Fury, Josh Taylor, Billy Joe Saunders, Carl Frampton, Michael Conlon, and now we're going to see if they can do the same thing in the US. But they're off to a great start.
Well, listen, Mike, good talking boxing with you today on IFL TV. Look forward to a bigger end of the year for the sport, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. All right? Top man, Mike.
Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you in person finally at a fight when we get back to things.
Hopefully when we get this vaccine sorted.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mike. Cheers.
Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free, impartial advice on all your debt.